Selamat siang. Good afternoon and welcome back to another Bali COVID-19 update. My name is Bruce and this is October 17th, 2021. And so a lot of good news on numbers and, well, still waiting on official notification of most stuff about opening Bali. And so let's get started with the numbers first. Okay, good news on numbers again. The 7-day average for new positive cases at 41, okay, so it's pretty steady. And the 7-day average for deaths at 3. So both good numbers, although it'd be nice to have no deaths. Yesterday in Indonesia as a whole, 997 new positive cases, so below 1,000 again, and deaths 44. So great news so far on the numbers. And what about individuals tested yesterday in Indonesia? 180,230 with a 0.55% positive rate. And the 7-day average positivity rate is 0.58%. Bali tested 43,140 individuals over the past 7 days with an achievement rate of 155.79% and a 7-day positivity rate of 0.67. And what about those vaccinations? Vaccination numbers, 3,385,494 first doses, 75.8% of the population, and second dose, 2,867,690, 64.2% of the population, 8,222 additional doses yesterday. To mention a number of times, why are the numbers for the first doses pretty stable? The numbers here are based on the total population of Bali. And numbers that we're hearing from the government are based on target. And so we're beginning to run out of people to give first doses to, based on the target and the difference between the target and the number of people in the population. Number of people in the population includes children who aren't eligible to be vaccinated and people who can't be vaccinated because of certain types of comorbidities. And, of course, those people who just refuse to get vaccinated. And what about the Bali numbers? New positive cases, 32, okay, below the average. Recoveries, 50. Deaths, 4. And active cases in Bali, 519. Good news on the numbers. And vaccines and vaccinations continuing to be ongoing. Day before yesterday, or was it? Yeah, day before yesterday, giving vaccinations out in Kampung Bugis again. And what are some of the things going on in the government's brains about how they're dealing with this? Well, COVID-19 Mu variant transmission determinant of Bali's reopening policy. So according to the deputy governor, the provincial administration is using data on the spread of COVID-19 Mu variant to determine the policy on reopening the island. That's interesting. I hadn't heard that before. He said the variant was discussed at the latest meeting with the central government. And that before that they were talking about the Delta variant, but now they're talking about the Mu variant. And he said this is what is determining how long the quarantine period is going to be for. According to the deputy governor, Bali is all set to receive tourists because 90% of its residents have received COVID-19 vaccination. Okay, not true if you look at the total number of people. It is true if you look at the target population. I've talked about this before. And Bali has 62 COVID-19 referral hospitals and 25 PCR centers that can accommodate 4,000 tests a day. And according to an expert staffer for crisis management at the Tourism and Creative Economy Ministry, Hengki Manurung, the government has not officially announced it yet, but said that it will be announced maybe tomorrow morning. And this is Fridays. And so nothing's been announced today. Maybe tomorrow, maybe Sunday, maybe Monday, maybe later in the month. Who knows? And what about the Peduli Lindungi, that famous app? Well, Peduli Lindungi, QR codes integrated with dozens of apps, according to Health Minister Budi Gunadi Sadikin. And currently 15 apps have been integrated into the PL ecosystem, including Bank Mandiri, BNE, Linkaja, Jaki, Grab, Gojek, and besides that, there's 35 other partners who are processing QR codes in their services. The health minister said hopefully this cooperation will build a better health infrastructure in Indonesia in the future. And what about data security, data privacy? Because, well, that's a problem everywhere in the world, and in Indonesia including. Well, the chair of the Digital Transformation Office of the Health Ministry said that user data will be secure. The data accessed by partners will be encrypted, data sent in the form of tokens. And according to him, the partners in the PL app can only access users' data when they enter public spaces, and the data is not stored in the partners' applications. Okay, so they're going to have temporary access to your data, but they're not going to be able to save it, according to this. And the Peduli Lindungi application has been installed in public spaces such as malls, restaurants, supermarkets, entertainment venues, offices, and other public spaces, and all visitors to these areas need to use it to gain entry. Okay, I haven't been to a place that needs it yet. I'm dying to try it out. I may go to the museum here in Bulang next week and take my granddaughter with me and see, because I know they installed it there. So the PL app is going to be a requirement, and it's being worked on, and if you're having problems with it, once you get here, you'll be able to get some help, if not before then. And as if we don't have enough to worry about now, Bali was struck by a magnitude 4.8 earthquake with 3 dead and 7 injured. Well, according to this article, I've heard 5 in a different article. So we had an earthquake the other day. I didn't feel it at all, but my wife did, and took off outside the house, I guess with my granddaughter, and forgot about me. Left me here for dead. Oh no. The quake affected Karangasem and Bangli, and searches have been concluded in those areas, according to a statement from Indonesia's Search and Rescue Agency. The quake occurred sometime around 4 a.m. and people ran outside in panic, as they usually do here. The U.S. Geological Survey said the quake was centered 62 kilometers northeast of Singaraja, and it was shallow depth of 10 kilometers, which says that may have amplified the amount of damage. What kind of damage? Well, it's landslides in hilly districts, and landslides killing at least 2 people and cutting off access to at least 3 villages. Toppled homes and temples in Karangasem, the area closest to the epicenter, including killing a 3-year-old girl who was hit by falling debris. According to Ninga Kertawa, the head of Bunga village in Karangasem, nearly 60% of the houses in that village were damaged and can no longer be lived in. Houses and government facilities were also damaged in Trunyan and Kintamani. And here's an interesting article. Now, we've already passed the 14th, and so we know, okay, Bali didn't open up. But there are some interesting comments in this article from some key people. So one of the things the article talks about are the reactions from regular people. And so here's one from a holiday villa manager. We're tired of promises from the government. Honestly, we're tired of hoping. We need tourists back. And he said, I don't think things will change rapidly under the new policy because people still have to follow terms and conditions like COVID-19 test, quarantine, etc. 26-year-old surf instructor said, to be honest, I can't really rely on the government anymore because, as we know, it changes so many regulations over the course of days. So when I heard about Bali opening, I thought, nice, great. But my expectations aren't high because it could be tomorrow that they close it again. So I've heard this too, and you'll see this all over on social media. People are disappointed, and the 14th came and went. The party was there, nobody came, and people said, what is going on? When are we going to get people here? If we're open, why aren't there people here? According to the Bali Tourism Agency head, Putu Astawa, he said the tourism activity is going to be muted at first. He said the reopening was announced with quite short notice. And he said, I'm not too optimistic yet. I think 1 flight this month is good enough. Okay, 1 flight this month being 1 flight in October. It would give industry players strong motivation. He added that he expected about 200 tourists to arrive in Bali in October, and that the monthly figure could rise to about 1,000 by January. And according to Iputu Astawa, he said, we hope that once the border is open, it will be open for good. I hope that people are not struck with reopening euphoria, there's that word again, and forget about the pandemic. And according to this article, 83% of Bali residents have received a second dose, 99% have received a first dose, according to Health Ministry data. That's using the target population. So if you use the target population, things are pretty amazing here. And the deputy governor said this week that tourists might not come flocking in right away, as travelers usually need a month or so to arrange their flights and visas. And according to the Indonesian Travel Agents Association Secretary General Pauline Suharno, honestly, we don't know which airlines will be allowed to land in Bali, and because of that, we didn't sell any tickets to Bali. So, waiting for official confirmation on a lot of stuff still. It may be coming out right now as I'm talking, but this is Sunday, so probably tomorrow. Of course, I've said that a lot of times, but there may be some more official circulars out tomorrow from the government, and I'll talk about that on Wednesday. And some bad news for people who are going to come in under this tourist plan that the government is working on, that supposedly started on the 14th and, well, maybe starting sometime soon. COVID-19 task force confirms tourists can only travel in Bali and Riau Islands. So foreign tourists coming in under this new plan can only enter through two airports, Riau and Bali. And they're only going to be allowed to travel in Riau and Bali. So bad news for Lombok, say, or Java, or Sumbawa, anywhere else that tourists coming in may want to go to. They're going to be restricted to those two islands. And the tourists that come in will be the responsibility of local governments, and they are going to need to supervise the tourists coming in to make sure they don't go where they're not supposed to. So you will be surveilled. And as just about every article these days has, there's a list of the 19 countries that are allowed to enter Indonesia. But I still haven't seen any official confirmation of that, but maybe by Sunday there will be. And what are the 19 countries? Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, New Zealand, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, China, India, Japan, South Korea, Liechtenstein, Italy, France, Portugal, Spain, Sweden, Poland, Hungary, and Norway. And no, Singapore is not on there, and neither is Taiwan, interestingly enough. And of course, Australia is not on there, and waiting to see what's going to happen with Australia. And according to Pak Luhut, the granting of permits to these 19 countries is not without reason. And they were chosen according to standards, WHO standards, because the number of confirmed cases was at level 1 and 2 with a low positivity rate. That's why we have those 19 countries. And have we got anybody here yet? No, this is Friday. And here's an answer to a frequently asked question. Government allows international visitors to travel outside appointed green zone areas in Bali. So once Bali opens up, according to the head of Bali's tourism agency, Putra Stawa, again, he's always in the news. Visitors who test negative for COVID-19 and go through the 5-day quarantine will be allowed outside of the 3 appointed green zone areas of Nusa Dua, Sanur, and Ubud. Government officials have installed thousands of the Peduli Lindungi QR codes at the major tourist areas around the island. This includes hotels, shopping malls, cafes, tourist attractions, and from a total of 10,000 Peduli Lindungi codes that were targeted to be installed, 7,000 have already been installed according to the Stawa. And Peduli Lindungi seems to be out in English now. You can download that. One of the regular downloading places, I forget what they're called, but everybody knows what they are. So try that and see, is there an English version? If you get it and it works, let me know down here. And in a seeming backstep from the government and a win for hotels, the Bali provincial government allows regular tourists to stay at quarantine hotels. So I said the other day that quarantine hotels were not going to be allowed to have regular visitors there, but the government has reversed itself. And according to the governor, several hotels have separate towers and villas that can be used for quarantine tourists and regular tourists alike. So if one building has several floors, the hotel management can regulate which floor is for quarantine and which floor is for regular tourists in order for them not to mix. And the deputy governor, of course, had something to say about this matter too. He said it's permissible to receive regular guests in addition to quarantine guests depending on the condition of the hotel. If the hotel does not physically allow the building to be used as one between regular and quarantine guests, then focus on the quarantine alone. But in many hotels, he said, there's 2-wing block buildings and it's possible to accept quarantine and regular visitors. Hotels with villas and cottages are still acceptable to do the same thing because you can keep the two groups isolated. That pretty much puts an answer to the, will I be allowed to wander around the hotel grounds? If you're going to be in a hotel that has both regular and quarantined visitors, I can't see them allowing you to get out. You're going to be restricted to your room. And so we have no planes yet. And how about getting some planes here? Well, this is interesting. Restoring Bali tourism, Angkasa Pura I gives discount on landing fees. So they're trying to entice airlines to land here by giving them a discount on what they have to pay to land here. So the airport operator is providing stimulus and incentives for national and foreign airlines that carry out international flights to and from Bali. And these discounts will last from October 14th, the other day when we're supposed to open, up until June 30th of next year. For the period from October 14th to December 31st, the landing fee discount will be 100%. And from January 1st to June 30th, the landing fee discount will be 50%. So the airport is getting serious about getting some flights in here. In the last video, I talked about the governor's comments about tourism being pushed down to 6th place in terms of the economy of Bali, and that Bali is over-reliant on tourism. Well, this is interesting. Koster optimistic hotel bookings in Bali will reach tens of thousands in November. So the governor predicts that thousands of foreign tourists will start arriving in Bali in November. And he said that by the end of October there will be flights, either charter or general flights, and this will be the start of foreign tourists to Bali. And in a related story, 20,000 hotel rooms in Bali have been booked by tourists from 11 countries from November. So the other day we had 0, now we have 20,000. And more from the governor on this. On the first day there were no foreign tourists coming, the governor said, but in November 2021, there are already 20,000 rooms booked by foreign tourists. So 2 days ago there were none, and now there's 20,000. That's amazing. The governor said from reports he received yesterday from the 19 countries, there are already many who ordered hotels for November, and that's where the 20,000 comes from. The tourists were from 11 countries. The 11 countries included China, India, Japan, South Korea, France, Spain, Sweden, Poland, Hungary, and Norway. And the governor said that he didn't think the 5-day quarantine period is going to be a problem for foreign tourists. He believes that foreign tourists coming to Bali are qualified and wise. Completely different from what a lot of people are saying and what a lot of reports in the news are when they take a look at Bali and compare us to other countries that we're competing with for share of the foreign pie. And the requirements for coming seem to be fairly stable at this point. You're going to have fully dosed and 14 days before departure for your last dose, and a negative PCR test within 72 hours of departure, and carry out the quarantine, and have a minimum health insurance of 1 billion rupees or $100,000. And what about those pesky visa problems? Ministry of Law and Human Rights issues new visa permit rules for foreigners. So this is a ministerial decree. So this is real. It is done. And in the regulation, the Minister of Law and Human Rights stipulated a number of activities that can be granted a visa permit, and this includes tourism activities and filmmaking as a type of visit visa activity with a visa index B211A. So now you can come in as a tourist officially. When you're asked what you're doing, you don't have to make up a story and say, I'm here to do business, whether you are or not. You can say you're here for tourism. Okay, cool. Additionally, for people who are carrying out activities in the context of making commercial films and have obtained permission from the competent authorities, you can get a visa with the index C312. And for those who want to attend education, you can get a visa index C316. So, good news for people that want visas. You can get a tourist visa now. Is that the type that people will get when they fly directly into Bali from these 19 countries? It could be. We'll just have to wait and see for more details, which are yet to be forthcoming. We threw a party on the 14th and nobody came. Okay, what about this article? Bali reopening to foreign tourists, but with mandatory quarantine still in place. Is anyone except its biggest fans likely to go? What a long title for an article. And according to data from the data company Statista, COVID-19 closed 60% of the island's GDP and caused a 42% reduction in workforce. And if you remember, at one point we were the global epicenter of the pandemic. People were dying left and right. People were getting sick left and right. And now look at our numbers, looking much, much better. Well, looking great. Let's not say much, much better. They're looking great. And according to this article, Bali has consistently topped travel polls during the pandemic, including TripAdvisor's 2021 list of the world's most popular destinations. Wow, okay, didn't know that. And Indonesia's tourism ministry is banking on nostalgia, people missing their Bali vacation, to bring 3.6 million visitors, foreign visitors, to the island in 2022. That will be twice the number in 2020, but far from the 6.3 million that visited in 2019. Good. 6.3 million is way too much for this island. But the article says, don't pack your bags yet. There's still strict entry rules. Okay, and we know that. And I've talked about that before, and part of it is the price of the quarantine. Well, one thing is the quarantine, and so this article says, the first and largest deal breaker is a mandatory 5-day quarantine at an accredited 3 to 5 star hotel starting at $60 a night. Okay, and you remember in a previous article, the governor said, no problem with the 5-day quarantine. That is not going to be an issue. Okay, well, this is one of the news articles out of the many that note the quarantine and say Indonesia's quarantine is going to keep it from getting tourists that are going to be going to the Maldives, to Vietnam, to Thailand, to wherever. According to a recent survey by the International Air Transport Association, IATA, 84% of respondents have no interest in holidaying at destinations that require a quarantine of any length. And according to Statista, the average stay in Bali is about 9 days. And so if you have a 5-day quarantine, that gives you 4 days left. Okay, and so the quarantine is going to be a problem. And this article mentions the Maldives, and I talked about this before. My friend who decided to go to the Maldives for his honeymoon instead of Bali because of the quarantine, well, and the mess about opening and everything else. The Maldives opened their borders to all tourists without quarantine in July, and they've had 115,000 tourists in September, and they're bracing for a surge as the holiday season will be coming up in the next few months, and they're already fully booked most top resorts for the Christmas New Year period. And supposedly Thailand will be opening up in November for 10 low-risk countries, including China and Singapore, with no quarantine if people are fully vaxxed and test negative. Other countries with no quarantine, Sri Lanka, Nepal. And what else does this article say? There's a couple of interesting things in here. So it talks about what you have to do, and I've talked about that before in order to get in here. Clubs. It says beach clubs insist that you wear a mask to get in, but once you get in, you can take it off, order a bottle of vodka, and forget all about the pandemic. And it says nightclubs in Seminyak are now open again and doing a roaring trade due to pent-up demand from Jakartan refugees, and the expatriate community on entry staffs will place a sticker over your camera on your phone or hold it for you to prevent photos of maskless people on crowded dance floors from appearing on social media. I've heard this, but I haven't seen it. And it says the same thing applies to gyms and spas. Wear a mask to get in and then do as you please. You can go to Ubud, where not many people are these days. And it also mentions Ahmed, Janidasa, and Lovina as places where you can go and pretty much have the beach to yourself. You can get cheap deals on accommodations. It says there's discounts up to 70%. And how does the article conclude? Well, it says, yes, Bali is lovelier and less crowded than it has been in decades, but unless you are planning to stay for a month or two, it's just not worth the hassle, expense, or risk. Okay, time for the wrap-up. Where are we at? We're at a good place in terms of numbers. Numbers are down, vaccines are up, so we're open. Nothing's coming in yet. But as mentioned in several of the segments, things weren't really planned all that well in advance, and so it's going to take some time. And as I mentioned, some airlines have already put Bali down as a destination for November. That does not mean that that's going to stay that way. That does not mean that the airlines have already been given permission to land. It means that they have it on their website. And so we're expecting some more information, some official information from the government in the next few days. And so we'll talk about that on Wednesday. And in the last video, I talked about questions that I had. And so let's take a look at questions again and see where we're at. So who is going to come in? So it appears at this point it's going to be 19 people. It appears it's going to be 19 countries. It could be 19 people. The National Task Force issued SE-15 for permitting foreigners from 19 countries, and they are Bahrain, China, Hungary, India, Italy, Japan, South Korea, Kuwait, Liechtenstein, Norway, France, the UAE, Poland, Portugal, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, New Zealand, Spain, Sweden, and they will be able to come into Riyadh and Bali direct. They will, however, have to go through a 5-day quarantine as of today. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? And what kind of visa? So I mentioned what kind of visa are people going to get. Well, tourism has been added to the B211. So I mentioned that in the previous segment, so you don't have to lie about that anymore. Are they going to make this easier and put a VOA in? I'm thinking that there's going to be a VOA, but that's just a guess on my part. And there's a question about, will people on the B211s, people with KITAS and KITAP, be allowed to fly directly to Bali? It's not clear at this point. And what about the airlines and which airlines are going to be allowed to come in and how that's going to work? Yet to be officially commented on, waiting for a circular from the Department of Transportation. And what about the hotels? Well, it looks like there's 35 hotels at this point, although an official list has not come out yet. And remember, I've talked in a number of segments about adding other hotels. No word on what's going to happen there. 35 hotels at this point seems like it's going to be enough if we're going to get these small numbers. But if we got 20,000 bookings, as I mentioned in a previous segment, well, what's that about? So I don't know. I haven't heard anything new about the 20,000. And there was a question about where people can go. Can they travel around the island, or are they going to be restricted to green zones? Well, it's been decided by the provincial government that people will be allowed to go wherever they want to go on the island. And what about the Peduli Lindungi app? Well, everybody is going to have to use that as of this point, and the EHAC will have to be completed before departure, and that's part of the Peduli Lindungi. And as I said in the previous segment, there is an English version that is out from what I've heard, although I haven't actually checked to make sure it's there. And if you check and you find it and it seems like it's working, leave a comment below. And what kind of rules will be in effect for people that come here, same as everybody else that's here. Is the 5-day quarantine going to be a deal killer for people coming into Bali? Quite possibly. What's the final line here on this in terms of foreigners entering Bali directly? We don't know. We're still waiting. It's the 17th and we're still waiting for a lot of circulars to be released. But at this point, we can kind of look at November as people showing up, starting to show up. And as I said many times, every week, every video, I'm looking at December for people starting to come back in here in numbers, and by that time you may see the quarantine drop for fully vaccinated people. I don't know. That's another guess of mine. And what is it like right now? We're getting domestic tourists. There's a lot of domestic tourists. There's a lot of activity down by the beaches and things. You can take a look at, which hand? Video here. This is the monkeys I've mentioned sometimes. They're out showing this. And then there's another video, Bali Walk-in Shops, and he travels around. He posts videos every day. Very interesting. I like his videos. He's got a very dry sense of humor. So we see local people, domestic tourists, out here in Bali, and they're wandering around and they're visiting places. They're going to cafes. They're going to the beaches. And so that's good news. My son, who's up here visiting today and lives in Denpasar, said There's traffic jams in Denpasar now, Dad. So that is good news. And so that's about it. There's some more news. There's some interesting things going on in Singapore, which I wanted to talk about, but I'll get to that on Wednesday. And by Wednesday, I hope that there's some more specific news, official news about what's actually happening here. If you are planning on coming in, if you're from one of the 19 countries and you've booked a flight, leave a comment below. I'm interested to see how this is going to work out. So that's it for today. It was a beautiful day earlier. It's really cloudy up here in Singaraja right now. Looks like it is going to rain, and it is hot. It was 31 degrees in this room yesterday. 31, and it's hot right now. I'm not sure how hot it is, but it's hot. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up, please. And if you haven't subscribed, subscribe. Click on the notification and you'll be notified when new videos come out. If you don't like it, you can always leave a thumbs down. I get one every time, maybe more next time, who knows. Okay, stay safe, be kind to someone today, and if you want to visit Bali, I hope you're gonna get here, and let me know if you're gonna come. Okay, see you on Wednesday. Thanks for visiting.